On the coldest night, a curvy girl is handed over like property to a scarred stranger with a cane. He offers a warm coat, a locked door, and one rule: she's safe, under his protection. But when a bolt slams into the window and cars flood the driveway, the truth rips open. This disabled stranger is the hidden king of the city. He doesn't take what isn't offered, but he will destroy anyone who touches her. Then a darker secret surfaces: a stolen ledger tied to her late father and a traitor inside his own bloodline who wants her as bait. A chapel turns into a live stream ransom, a shipyard becomes a trap under storm clouds, and the man who limps moves like a blade for the only woman he'll ever claim. If she was the punishment, why does he fight like she's the prize? What's in her father's ledger that could start, or end, a war? And when the king finally chooses, will he save her heart, or burn the city to keep it? Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, lightning flashed across the churning harbor below, illuminating Brielle's new room in stark bursts. The space was larger than her old bedroom and sitting room combined, with cream-colored walls and dark wood furniture that whispered of quiet wealth. Nothing like the gaudy gilt and crystal of her aunt's desperate social climbing. Her fingers traced the soft wool of Leon's coat still draped around her shoulders. It carried a hint of cedar and something sharper, his cologne maybe. The weight of it felt protective, rather than imprisoning, though her heart still raced at the night's upheaval. A gentle knock at the door made her start. "Come in!" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. A silver-haired woman in a neat black dress entered carrying a tray. "Mr. Valente asked that you have something warm before bed, miss. I'm Mrs. Romano, the housekeeper." She set down the tray, revealing a steaming bowl of minestrone and fresh bread. "There are night clothes in the dresser, and the bathroom is fully stocked. If you need anything else, just press the intercom by the bed." The simple kindness in her tone made Brielle's eyes burn. When was the last time someone had brought her food with such care? "Thank you," she managed. Mrs. Romano's weathered face softened. "You're safe here, child. Try to rest." She slipped out as quietly as she'd entered. Brielle pulled Leon's coat tighter, inhaling its subtle scent as she tried to make sense of her situation. The transfer of obligation her step-uncle had forced her to sign. What did it really mean? Leone Valente hadn't looked at her like property to be claimed. His dark eyes had held something else when they met hers across that horrible dinner table. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. She remembered how he'd risen from his chair, tall and broad-shouldered despite the cane, how his presence had filled the room like incoming tide. The way her aunt's sneering voice had faltered when he'd simply said, "Enough." One word, quiet but final. The soup's aroma drew her from her thoughts. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she'd barely touched the elaborate dinner her aunt had arranged to impress their guest. Moving to the small table by the windows, Brielle settled into a comfortable chair and took a spoonful. The broth was rich with vegetables and herbs, the kind of honest food that comforted rather than showed off. Below her window, waves crashed against the cliffs in rhythm with the storm. The villa seemed to float between sea and sky, removed from the world she'd known. No more tiptoeing around her aunt's moods or enduring her step-uncle's cold disapproval. No more snide comments about her appetite, her curves, her very existence as an unwanted obligation. But what would replace those familiar torments? Leon Valente was clearly powerful, dangerous even. Yet he'd shown more consideration in the past hour than her own family had in years. The memory of his hand at her elbow, steady and gentle as he helped her into the car, sent an unexpected shiver through her. She'd noticed things during that tense drive, the quiet authority in his instructions to the driver, the way his security team moved with practiced efficiency, how his fingers had occasionally tightened on the cane handle when the road turned rough. Finishing her soup, Brielle explored the room further. The attached bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome. The dresser held silk pajamas in her size, and the closet contained several changes of clothes that would actually fit her curves, instead of straining awkwardly like the hand-me-downs her aunt had grudgingly provided. Someone had thought about her comfort. Someone had planned. Thunder rolled closer as she changed into the pajamas, hanging Leon's coat carefully in the closet. The bed was cloud-soft when she finally slipped between the sheets. Nothing like her lumpy mattress at home. Home? No, that house had never really been home. The storm's symphony surrounded her, rain against windows, waves on stone, wind in the eaves. Such different sounds from the city's constant noise. Here, even the violence of the weather felt cleansing somehow. Brielle turned onto her side, watching lightning paint shadows on the walls. Questions crowded her mind. What debt had her father owed that Leon Valente would claim her to settle it? Why had he looked at her with such intensity during that awful dinner? And why did the memory of his quiet, "You're under my protection now," make her feel both unsettled and oddly secure? The day's emotions crashed over her like the waves below. Fear tangled with relief, uncertainty with hope. She was free of her aunt's cruelty, but bound to a stranger whose world clearly operated by different rules than she knew. A stranger who moved like contained power, who commanded with quiet words, whose careful courtesies masked something dangerous and deep. Sleep tugged at her despite her churning thoughts. The last thing she remembered was distant thunder and the phantom tap of a cane in the hallway, keeping time with her slowing heartbeat as the storm rolled out to sea. Sunrise painted the sea in shades of rose and gold when Brielle's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she didn't recognize the luxurious bedroom with its ocean view and crisp sheets. Then yesterday's memories rushed back. The horrible dinner, the rain-soaked escape, Leon Valente's quiet promise of protection. A manila envelope sat on the bedside table, her name typed neatly across the front. Inside, she found several pages labeled Shelter Agreement. The legal language was surprisingly clear. The undersigned agrees to provide food, clothing, medical care, and physical protection for a minimum period of 90 days. In exchange, the protected party will maintain strict discretion regarding residence location and household activities. No intimate relations are required or implied by this arrangement. Brielle read it twice, noting how different it felt from the hasty contract her step-uncle had forced her to sign. This one spelled out rights and responsibilities clearly, with no hidden catches she could see. The aroma of fresh coffee drew her from the bed. She found clean clothes in her size laid out in the bathroom, soft pants, a sweater in deep blue, even properly fitting undergarments. After dressing, she followed her nose through the quiet villa. The kitchen was a chef's dream, all gleaming steel and marble flooded with morning light. A massive dog, some kind of mastiff, lifted its head from a cushioned bed near the industrial ovens. Rather than growling, it thumped its tail against the floor. "That's Rex," said a quiet voice. A man emerged from the pantry, tall and broad-shouldered with watchful eyes. "I'm Salvo. The boss said you'd be joining us for breakfast." "I'm Brielle," she replied, watching how he positioned himself between her and the knives on the magnetic strip. Protective, but not threatening. "Is it okay if I make coffee?" "Of course." He gestured to the professional machine. "Everything here is at your disposal." As she worked the espresso maker, Rex heaved himself up and padded over to inspect her. The dog's scarred muzzle suggested a rough past, but his eyes were gentle as he sniffed her hand. "He was a fighting dog before the boss found him," Salvo explained, setting out pastries. "Now he guards the villa." The way he said the boss carried weight, respect mixed with something deeper. "Good morning." Leona's voice preceded him into the kitchen. He moved with contained power despite the cane, nodding approval at seeing Brielle already comfortable with Rex. "I trust you've reviewed the agreement?" "Yes." Brielle straightened her spine. "I'd like to add something, if I may. I want to work, to earn my keep. I have experience in commercial kitchens." Leone studied her, then smiled slightly. "Mrs. Romano could use help with meals. The staff dining room serves 30. 50 when we're fully operational," Salvo added, then fell silent at Leone's glance. "I also—" Brielle hesitated, then pressed on. "My father's things are still in boxes at my aunt's garage. Books, photos, his old papers. Could they be retrieved?" "Of course." Leone pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Salvo will arrange a discreet pickup this afternoon. Would you like a tour of the villa while we wait?" The sprawling house revealed itself slowly as they walked. Every window framed the sea, every room balanced luxury with purpose. The staff wing hummed with quiet activity. A private gym held equipment modified for Leon's injured leg. The library walls were lined with books in multiple languages. What caught Brielle's attention were the photographs. Formal portraits of serious men in expensive suits, casual shots of the same men laughing at parties or playing with children. All the frames had small black ribbons in the corners. "My family," Leone said simply, following her gaze. "Lost in the war that cost me my leg." They ended the tour on a stunning terrace with unobstructed views of the coastline. Dust on the furniture suggested it wasn't used often. Leone's grip tightened on his cane as he looked out over the cliff edge. "The gym and kitchen are yours to use freely," he said, turning away from the view. "The west wing is private, but otherwise you may go where you wish. Rex will show you the safe paths down to the beach." As if summoned, the mastiff appeared at Brielle's side, leaning gently against her leg. Below them, waves crashed against the rocks in eternal rhythm. "A courier van has been arranged," Salvo reported, materializing in the doorway. "They'll retrieve your father's belongings within the hour." "Thank you." Brielle meant it for everything: the contract's clarity, the kitchen access, the chance to reclaim pieces of her past. Leon acknowledged her gratitude with a slight nod before withdrawing to his study. She spent the afternoon exploring the kitchen with Mrs. Romano, learning the staff's favorite dishes and meal schedules. Rex followed her movements with drowsy attention from his bed by the ovens. The dog's presence was oddly comforting, a warm constant in this strange new world. When the van's headlights finally appeared at the gate, Brielle watched from the kitchen window as Salvo directed the loading of her father's boxes. Each weathered cardboard container might hold answers about the debt that had brought her here, about why Leon Valente had claimed her protection with such quiet certainty. Rex pressed his broad head against her hip as thunder rolled in from the sea. Another storm was building, but this time she faced it from a position of relative safety, with a clear contract and the right to useful work. The Mastiff's solid warmth anchored her as waves crashed below, marking time until the van returned with pieces of her past. Through the villa's kitchen windows, afternoon light softened into dusk, casting honey-gold shadows. Across the marble countertops, Brielle watched Salvo check his phone, his movements precise and economical as he gathered reusable shopping bags, folding each one with military efficiency. She'd noticed how he never wasted motion. Every gesture served a purpose, like a dance choreographed for survival rather than beauty. "We need fresh produce," he said, his deep voice matter-of-fact. "Would you like to come?" The boss approved a quick trip. His eyes, constantly assessing, briefly met hers with unexpected warmth before resuming their vigilant scan of the kitchen's perimeter. Her heart leaped at the chance to leave the property, the walls that had both sheltered and confined her for weeks now. Freedom, even temporary, felt like oxygen to starved lungs. "Yes, please," she replied, trying to mask her eagerness but failing as a smile broke across her face. The drive into town wound along coastal roads that hugged the cliffside, waves crashing below like distant applause, Salvo's eyes constantly scanning, the rearview mirror side streets passing vehicles, his hands relaxed but ready on the steering wheel. The car itself moved like a protective bubble, expensive and understated, with windows tinted just enough to obscure without drawing attention. Brielle watched fishing boats bobbing on the horizon, their white sails tiny against the vastness of the Mediterranean. He parked in a small lot near the market square where strings of lights crisscrossed overhead, not yet illuminated, but waiting for night's permission. The evening air carried salt and cooking spices, garlic, basil, and the sweet tang of tomatoes roasting somewhere nearby. Locals called to each other across stalls, their dialect musical and fast. "Stay close," Salvo murmured, falling into step beside her. His posture was casual to anyone watching, but Brielle had learned to recognize the coiled readiness in his shoulders, the way his gaze continuously swept the crowd like radar. The market's narrow lanes bustled with locals buying dinner ingredients, children weaving between legs, old men playing cards at corner tables. For a moment, Brielle could pretend she belonged among them. She selected tomatoes, feeling their weight and inhaling their earthy scent while Salvo watched the crowd, his presence both reassuring and a reminder that this normality was borrowed, not hers to keep. She felt almost normal, picking herbs that released their fragrance when her fingers brushed their leaves, examining fresh pasta hanging in golden coils until a shoulder bumped hers deliberately. The contact was too firm, too intentional to be accidental in the half-empty space around them. "Tell your new keeper the sea takes what isn't paid." The words slithered past her ear like cold fingers as a thick-necked man in a leather jacket brushed by. His cologne, too strong, too synthetic, lingered after him, along with the implicit threat that curdled the pleasant market air. Before she could process the threat, Salvo materialized between them, appearing like a shadow solidified. His stance was casual, but his eyes were sharp steel, reflecting nothing, revealing nothing, promising everything. The thug sneered, a flicker of recognition crossing his face, but backed away, melting into the crowd like ice into warm water. Brielle's hands trembled as she placed lemons in a bag, the citrus scent suddenly too sharp, too bright in her nostrils. Her heartbeat pulsed in her throat as her gaze darted through the market, suddenly seeing potential threats where moments before she'd seen only shoppers. Through the gaps between vendors' stalls, strung with herbs and hanging cheeses, she spotted 2 motorcycles idling near a graffitied phone booth, their engines purring with predatory patience. Their riders wore similar leather jackets to the man who'd threatened her, their faces obscured behind tinted visors. "Time to go," Salvo said quietly, taking the bags from her white-knuckled grasp. His free hand stayed near his jacket, where she knew a weapon rested, as he guided her back to the car. His body angled subtly to keep himself between her and the street, turning their retreat into a casual stroll for anyone watching. The drive home felt longer, shadows deepening as Salvo took a winding route, doubling back occasionally, driving through residential streets before returning to main roads. His silence spoke volumes. This wasn't normal precaution, but calculated evasion. When they finally pulled through the villa gates, Leon was waiting in the courtyard, his cane planted firmly on the cobblestones, like a flag claiming territory. His face, usually composed, carried a tightness around the eyes that made Brielle's stomach clench. "Inside," he said, his voice flat as a blade. The single word carried both concern and command, brooking no argument. In his study, Leon stood at the window, while Brielle perched on the edge of a leather chair that seemed to swallow her smaller frame. The room smelled of old books, gunmetal, and the faint trace of Leon's cologne, sandalwood, and something darker. The bookshelves towered with leather-bound volumes, their spines a testament to collected knowledge and power. A chessboard sat in the corner, a game half finished, black pieces advancing methodically toward checkmate. "I keep my name off the streets for a reason," he said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them like a taut wire. "Enemies target what they think will hurt us. My people stay safe through discretion." His fingers tapped once against the windowsill, the only outward sign of tension in his otherwise controlled demeanor. "The man at the market," Brielle began, her voice steadier than she expected. "A warning? They're testing boundaries." Leon turned, lamplight catching the silver at his temples, throwing half his face into shadow that emphasized the sharp angles of his cheekbones. "I run the Valenti Syndicate from the shadows. Loyalty keeps us strong. Protection keeps us alive." Each sentence fell like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples of understanding. Brielle studied him, the precise way he held himself, spine straight as a blade, how the cane extended his reach rather than supporting weakness. The handle, she noticed, was worn smooth in specific places, suggesting it served purposes beyond mobility. This wasn't a businessman with an injury. This was a predator who'd survived worse than a maimed leg, who'd turned limitation into advantage. Headlights swept the driveway as multiple vehicles glided through the gates, their engines nearly silent despite their obvious power. Leon watched through the window as men emerged, moving with practiced coordination that spoke of years working together. Some secured the perimeter, checking gates and sightlines, while others disappeared inside to check surveillance feeds and electronic security. The security sweep happened in near silence, encompassing her in its protective layers like invisible armor being assembled around her. "I understand now," Brielle said softly, watching a man test a lock on a garden gate with methodical precision. "I can't leave unescorted anymore." "No." Leone crossed to a panel beside her doorway, his movement fluid despite the cane, pressing it to reveal a row of buttons hidden in what had appeared to be decorative woodwork. "These connect directly to security. Your room, the kitchen, anywhere you spend time, all have panic buttons. Use them without hesitation." His voice carried absolute authority, leaving no room for pride or hesitation. He demonstrated each one's location, his movements precise, fingers brushing against hidden panels and switches that blended seamlessly with the villa's elegant design. "The threat at the market changes nothing about your freedom here, but outside these walls, you are under guard because you are mine to protect." His eyes held hers, unflinching, honest in a way that made her throat tighten. The possessive weight of those words settled over her like a cloak, restrictive yet oddly comforting. Through the window, she watched the security team complete their sweep, their shadows moving like water through the garden, flowing around obstacles with practiced ease. The villa had seemed like a sanctuary when she arrived, all Mediterranean charm and sun-drenched terraces. Now she saw it was a fortress, every beautiful element concealing defensive capability, every comfort backed by calculated strength. In the kitchen, Salvo efficiently unpacked their groceries, while Mrs. Romano started dinner, chopping onions with practiced speed, the knife's rhythmic tapping a counterpoint to the soft, classical music playing from hidden speakers. The routine felt surreal after the market's tension, this bubble of domestic normalcy existing alongside invisible threats. Rex Leone's massive Cane Corso padded over to rest his head on Brielle's lap, his weight substantial and warm, as if sensing her unease. "The boss runs things quiet," Salvo said, arranging tomatoes in a bowl, their red skins vibrant against the blue ceramic. "But quiet doesn't mean weak. Everyone who matters knows whose protection you're under." His eyes, briefly meeting hers, conveyed additional meaning. This wasn't just about her safety, but something larger, currents of power and territory she was only beginning to perceive. Brielle scratched behind Rex's ears, feeling the velvet softness there, processing the layers of this new reality. The security cameras disguised as light fixtures, the armed men who moved like shadows through the property, the careful routines that seemed casual but were precisely calculated. It wasn't paranoia, but necessity. She'd stepped into a world where threats came wrapped in casual violence, where safety meant walls and watchful eyes, where protection was both gift and chain. Leone's cane tapped down the hall as he approached the kitchen, the sound distinctive, almost musical against the marble floor. He paused in the doorway, his presence filling the space without a word, commanding attention without demanding it. Rex's tail thumped once against the floor in acknowledgement. When Leone finally spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty, the promise etched in steel. "You are safe because you are mine to protect." The library's antique shutters creaked in the night breeze. Brielle sat curled in a leather armchair, a book forgotten in her lap as she watched Leone review security reports. The quiet felt deceptive, like the pause before thunder. A sharp crack shattered the silence. Wood splintered as something punched through the shutter beside her head. Leone moved with shocking speed, pulling her to the floor as guards burst in. "Clear the room," he ordered, voice glacial. His body shielded hers until Salvo confirmed no immediate threat. The crossbow bolt had buried itself in a bookshelf, a note wrapped around its shaft. Leone's expression hardened as he read the message, then passed it to Salvo. "Renzo Morricone," Salvo growled, "says he'll return the girl in pieces if we don't surrender the Valente accounts." Brielle's hands trembled. Leone steadied her with a touch to her shoulder, his other hand white-knuckled on his cane. "Initiate full lockdown," he commanded. "Double the perimeter guards. Marco takes East Wing, Antonia West. No one enters or leaves without direct confirmation." The efficiency of his men spoke of well-practiced protocols. Within minutes, metal shutters sealed every window. Armed guards took positions at strategic points, while others swept the grounds with tactical lights. "You'll stay in my suite tonight," Leona said, brooking no argument. "It's closest to the safe room and has additional security measures." He led her up the curved stairs, his cane striking a measured rhythm. The suite sprawled across the villa's secure core, a sitting room opening to 2 separate bedrooms with a shared bathroom between. Even in crisis, his control remained absolute. "The safe room is behind this panel," he demonstrated, revealing a reinforced door. "Biometric lock. You're already authorized." A power flicker sent shadows dancing. Leone stiffened, a spasm of pain crossing his face as his leg seized. His grip on the cane turned desperate. "Let me help," Brielle said softly. "Show me how." After a tense moment, he nodded. "Heel slides first, then quad sets. Count of 10 for each." She supported him to a chair, following his quiet instructions. Together they worked through the exercises, slow slides, careful stretches, measured breathing. The intimate trust of it hung in the air between them. "The pain started after the bomb," he said, voice low. 7 months ago, doctor said I might never walk again. But you did. Had to. Weakness gets people killed in my world." He met her eyes. "The cane isn't just for walking, it's a reminder to stay vigilant." "Is that why you haven't used the terrace? Too exposed?" His laugh held no humor. "That obvious. I notice things," she said. "The way you study sightlines, how you position yourself in rooms." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sweep of searchlights across the grounds. The spasm gradually eased under their shared focus. "Fear is natural," Leone said finally. "But it can't rule you. I learned that in rehab. Every step was agony, but giving up would have destroyed everything I built, everything I protect." "Like the accounts Renzo wants?" "The Valente books hold more than money. They're proof of loyalty, of deals kept and broken." He studied her. "Your father's name came up today. Port Authority contact called. Renzo's been asking questions about any connection between him and our ledgers." Brielle's breath caught. "My father was an accountant. He never mentioned the Valentes." "Greta, my contact, says Renzo's desperate. He's losing territory support. A link to those books would give him leverage. and I'm convenient bait. The reality settled cold in her stomach. You're under my protection, Leone corrected firmly. Not bait, never bait. Dawn began painting the sky when Leone finally stood, moving carefully to the terrace doors. His cane anchored against marble as he pushed them open, letting in salt air and seabird cries. Rex padded out to sit alert at his side. I won't let them use you, he said, silhouetted against the lightening horizon. Whatever connection your father had to those books, we'll face it together. You have my word. Brielle watched him standing there, dangerous grace contained, power leashed by choice. The mastiff kept steady watch while golden light spilled across the terrace, turning the scene into a study in contrasts. Beauty and violence, tenderness and strength. The night's fear lingered, but something else grew alongside it. Trust in the man who moved like a storm, but touched her with careful hands, who turned his injuries into weapons and his protection into an unbreakable vow. Beyond the villa walls, Ravenport stirred to life. Ships sounded their horns in the harbor below. The new day brought its own dangers, but here in this moment, watching Leone and Rex stand guard against the dawn, Brielle felt an unexpected peace. Whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. Dawn painted the kitchen in soft gold as Brielle worked butter into dough, her movements precise and practiced. The rich scent of honey and yeast filled the air, wrapping the space in warmth. She'd risen early, driven by the need to create something good in the midst of danger. The kitchen staff moved around her with quiet respect, accepting her presence as natural. She portioned the dough into perfect rounds, remembering how her father used to praise her steady hands. Leone's arrival was announced by the measured tap of his cane on marble. He paused in the doorway, taking in the scene, flour dusting Brielle's cheeks, steam rising from fresh coffee, morning light catching the silver at his temples. You're making the whole villa smell like heaven, he said, settling onto a stool at the kitchen island. His sleeves were rolled to reveal corded forearms, his cane propped within easy reach. Honey rolls, she explained, sliding a warm plate toward him. The guards deserve better than protein bars for breakfast. His eyes crinkled. Taking care of my men already. Everyone needs real food, especially people watching our backs. They shared breakfast in companionable quiet, the rolls melting on their tongues. Leone watched her work, noting how she'd already learned the kitchen's rhythms. Join me in the gym after this? He asked. I need to do my exercises, and I'd like to show you something. In the private gym, modified equipment gleamed under track lighting. Leone demonstrated proper form as Brielle spotted him, explaining how he'd adapted his fighting style after the injury. Balance beats brute force, he said, moving through a careful sequence. The cane becomes an extension, a pivot point. Most opponents expect weakness, their mistake. Brielle absorbed the lesson, understanding how thoroughly he'd transformed limitation into advantage. When he guided her through basic self-defense moves, his touch remained professionally distant despite their proximity. Throughout the day, she tested the boundaries of her new role. She reorganized the pantry, drafted weekly menus, and insisted on proper break rotations for the security teams. Leone supported her authority without hesitation. The household is yours to manage, he said when she sought approval. I trust your judgment. During a late afternoon meeting, she brought coffee to his study. He caught her wrist as she set down his cup, pressing a kiss to the delicate skin there, a gesture both courtly and possessive. A reminder, he murmured. You are safe here, protected, not confined. The intimacy of the moment hung between them until Salvo's knock broke the spell. He entered, with a security update, expression grave. Suspicious van making loops on the Cliff Road, boss. Dark blue, no plates. Marco's team is tracking but maintaining distance. Leone's jaw tightened. Double the perimeter patrols. I want camera coverage expanded, especially near Brielle's suite. Already ordered the equipment, Salvo confirmed. I'll install it myself tonight. Brielle watched them work, their efficiency born of years of trust. Within hours, new security measures layered through the villa like invisible armor. As evening approached, she found Leone on the library terrace, Rex alert at his feet. The sea wind ruffled his hair as he studied threat assessment reports. My father's boxes, she said quietly. When they arrive tomorrow, I'd like to go through them right away. He looked up, reading the mix of hope and anxiety in her face. They'll be here by noon. You have my word. No delays. Night settled over the villa like velvet, security lights casting gentle patterns across manicured grounds. In her suite, Brielle listened to the steady murmur of radio checks in the hall. the voices of guards moving with quiet purpose. She curled under soft blankets, processing the day's subtle shifts. Leon's controlled power, revealed in glimpses. The way he'd kissed her wrist, claiming, without demanding, how naturally she'd stepped into running his household, and how completely he'd supported her authority. The security radio crackled with another all-clear signal. Outside her window, waves crashed against the cliffs in eternal rhythm. Despite the threats circling their sanctuary, Brielle felt oddly peaceful. She was learning to read the patterns of this new world, its dangers, and its unexpected grace. Sleep came easily, wrapped in layers of protection. The last thing she registered was Rex's low woof as he settled outside her door, a furry guardian complimenting the human ones who kept their watch through the dark hours. In the hall, radio voices continued their quiet cadence. North perimeter clear, east gate secure, all quiet on the cliff road. The villa breathed around her, alert and watchful, while she drifted into dreams scented with honey and sea salt. The afternoon sun glinted off the harbor as Leon's SUV wound through the warehouse district. Brielle watched containers stack like metal mountains against the sky, while Salvo followed their vehicle in a second car. The boxes should be here, Leon said, checking his phone. His cane rested across his knees, the polished wood catching light. The attack came with frightening precision. 2 black sedans squeezed their SUV between them, forcing them toward the empty loading zone. Leon's driver cursed, trying to maneuver free, but the trap was already set. Stay in the car, Leon ordered, his voice deadly calm. He opened his door with measured control, using his cane for balance as he emerged. In the same fluid motion, a blade appeared in his other hand, compact and lethal. Brielle's heart hammered as men poured from the other vehicles. She counted 6, no, 7, all armed. Salvo was already moving to flank them, his own weapon drawn. What happened next rewrote everything she thought she knew about Leon. He moved like water, like steel, like something between dance and death. The cane became a third point of contact, then a weapon, then a pivot point. An attacker rushed him with a knife. Leon redirected the momentum, sending the man flipping over a loading dock railing with a sickening crack. Another charged. The cane's steel tip found a knee, crushing it. A third tried to circle behind. Salvo dropped him with 2 precise shots. Inside, Leone commanded, and Brielle realized he'd worked his way back to shield her door. She scrambled out, pressed between his broad back and the car's frame. His blade flashed, opening a 4th man's arm to bone. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The remaining attackers scattered like roaches, dragging their wounded into the sedans. Tires squealed on wet concrete as they fled. Only then did Leon turn to her, his breath controlled despite the exertion. His hands were gentle as they checked her for injuries, running down her arms, tilting her face to the light. Are you hurt? He asked. Brielle, look at me. Are you hurt? She shook her head, her own hands trembling. You're bleeding. A thin line of red traced his cheekbone where a blade had barely missed. He wiped it away absently, more concerned with examining her for shock. Something fundamental shifted in her understanding as she watched him. This man who commanded such violence, who others feared enough to ambush in broad daylight, he had never once made her feel unsafe. Every touch had been careful, every boundary respected. Even now, fresh from dealing death, his hands on her were nothing but gentle. The drive back to the villa passed in tense silence. Salvo coordinated with their security teams while Leone's thumb traced slow circles on Brielle's knuckles, grounding her. Rain started falling as they arrived, pattering against the windows like nervous fingers. The villa hummed with heightened alertness. Extra patrols, doubled guards, weapons checked and rechecked. When night fell, Brielle found herself outside Leon's bedroom, pulse fluttering in her throat. She knocked softly. He opened the door immediately, as if he'd been waiting. He'd showered, changed into sleep clothes, but tension still lined his face. I don't want to be alone, she said simply. Understanding filled his eyes. He stepped back, letting her enter the warmly lit room. A king-sized bed dominated the space, turned down on both sides. You take whatever space you need, he said. I can sleep in the chair. No. She met his gaze steadily. The bed is big enough, I trust you. Something raw flickered across his features before his control smoothed it away. He nodded once, retrieving extra pillows to build a soft barrier down the center. Brielle slid under the covers fully clothed, watching as he settled on the other side. Rain tapped a gentle rhythm against the windows while security radios murmured in the halls. They lay facing each other across the pillow divide, close enough to share breath but not touch. Leon's eyes were dark pools in the dim light. "Consent or nothing," he murmured, tucking the blanket more securely around her shoulders. "That's my rule, always." She studied him, this dangerous man who killed to protect her, who built pillow walls to make her feel safe, who waited for her to choose every step closer. Hours passed. She dozed fitfully while Leon kept watch, his breathing steady, but eyes alert. Near dawn, exhaustion finally pulled him under. His features softened in sleep, years falling away. Brielle watched him drift, feeling an unfamiliar peace settle in her chest. The rain had gentled to a whisper, and pre-dawn light began painting the room in soft grays. "I feel safer with you," she whispered to his sleeping form, "than anywhere else I've ever lived." The words hung in the quiet room, true and terrifying in their implications. Outside, waves crashed against the cliffs in eternal rhythm. Inside, two people who had started as strangers breathed together in the growing light, while trust built careful bridges across the space between them. Rex's low woof from the hallway announced another security check. Footsteps passed, radio static crackled, and the villa's protective heartbeat continued its vigilant rhythm. But here in this room, in this moment, Brielle finally understood what true safety felt like. Not walls or weapons, but the choice to be vulnerable with someone who would rather die than break that trust. She closed her eyes at last, lulled by Leon's deep breathing and the steady drum of rain. The pillow barrier remained between them, but somehow the space it marked felt less like a wall and more like a promise, that every step forward would be her choice, that power could be gentle, that even the most dangerous man in her world would wait for her to build the bridges herself. Morning light spilled across the villa's driveway as a white courier van rolled through the gates. Brielle's heart quickened at the sight of 3 weathered cardboard boxes being unloaded. Her father's belongings, all that remained of him, had finally arrived. Leon supervised the delivery personally, his cane tapping a steady rhythm as he directed the boxes to the kitchen where Brielle waited. She ran her fingers over the dusty tops, throat tight with emotion. "Take your time," Leon said softly, positioning himself by the door to give her space while maintaining watch. Brielle opened the first box with trembling hands. Old cookbooks, their spines cracked from use, filled most of it. But it was her father's personal recipe journal that made her pause. The leather-bound book felt heavier than she remembered. "Something's not right," she murmured, running her fingers along the binding. There, a slight bulge in the back cover seam, double-stitched when all other seams were single. Leon moved closer as she carefully worked at the threading. A small metallic rectangle dropped into her palm, a microdrive, no larger than her thumbnail. "Wait!" Leon's voice sharpened. He leaned in, studying the drive's surface. "I recognize these markings. These are cipher headers my accountant used. Marcus Costa." His jaw tightened. "Your father was helping him create legitimate fronts for our operations." Brielle's fingers curled around the drive. The accident that killed him wasn't an accident. Leon's knuckles whitened on his cane. He must have refused to give up access when they threatened him. Throughout the kitchen, guards shifted to more alert positions. Salvo appeared in the doorway, awaiting instructions. "We decrypt in-house," Leon decided. "Keep Renzo blind to what we found." He turned to Brielle. "Are you willing to help? This was your father's work." She nodded, already reaching for her notebook. "I'll document everything. Every step." The afternoon unfolded in careful phases. While Leon's tech team constructed an air-gapped workstation in the study, Brielle maintained the villa's rhythm through measured meals and fresh coffee. Her notes grew detailed. Times, participants, security protocols. Rex padded between kitchen and study, sensing the heightened energy. Guards rotated shifts with extra vigilance. Through it all, Brielle kept moving, kept cooking, the steady work of feeding people, anchoring her, as the implications of their discovery expanded. Twilight painted the study's windows purple when the first metadata emerged. Leon sat beside her, their shoulders barely touching as dates scrolled past. "There," she pointed. "These entries overlap Dad's final weeks." Leon's breath caught. "And the bombing that took my leg." His voice dropped lower. "This could expose who funded it, the traitor who tried to destroy everything we built." Brielle reached for her calendar, circling tomorrow's date with a steady hand. "First decryption session at 9 a.m. She met Leon's gaze. "We'll find the truth. Together." Night settled over the villa as security performed final checks. Brielle stood in the study doorway, watching Leon secure the drive in a wall safe behind his desk. The lamp cast warm shadows across the room's dark wood and leather. She moved to lock the door, but Leon caught her hand. Into her palm, he pressed the key. "Your father's legacy," he said quietly. "You control who accesses it." The metal was warm against her skin. Such a small thing to hold so much power, like the drive itself, like the trust being placed in her hands. Through the windows, she could see guards patrolling the grounds, their flashlights cutting through darkness. Inside, the villa hummed with its nightly rhythm of security checks and radio calls. But here in the study, time seemed to pause as Brielle closed her fingers. Around the key, she thought of her father bent over this same cipher work, choosing principles over safety. Thought of Leon, turning his injury into a weapon of precise control. Thought of herself, no longer the burden her relatives had scorned, but a keeper of dangerous truths. The lamp burned steady on Leon's desk, illuminating stacks of notes in her careful handwriting. Tomorrow they would begin unraveling the encrypted threads of past betrayals. But tonight she held the key that could unlock justice, not just for her father, but for the man who had given her safety without demands. Brielle slipped the key onto her necklace chain, letting it rest beside her heart. Leon watched the gesture, understanding in his dark eyes. No words were needed as they left the study, the lamp casting their shadows long against the wall. Rex fell into step beside them as they walked the evening security rounds, a habit they'd developed over the past days. The Mastiff's presence was a comfort, his watchful devotion matching the guards who protected their sleep. In the kitchen, Brielle prepared a final pot of coffee for the night shift. Leon leaned on his cane nearby, his attention split between the security feeds and her practiced movements. The routine felt natural now, as if she'd always belonged in the strange world of danger and dedication. The coffee's rich aroma filled the air as she poured it into thermoses. Each cup was an offering of care, a small way to thank the men who risked their lives to keep the villa secure. Leon accepted his with a brush of fingers against her wrist, that careful touch that asked nothing but offered everything. Outside, waves crashed against the cliffs in eternal rhythm. Inside, the villa's protective heartbeat continued its vigilant drum, and in Brielle's pocket, a key pressed against her hip, a tangible reminder that she was no longer powerless, no longer alone. The sky hadn't quite lightened when Brielle carried a tray into the study. Steam rose from 2 coffee mugs, and beside them sat a crystal bowl of almonds dusted with cinnamon sugar, a small comfort for the work ahead. Leon was already at the computer, his cane propped against the desk. The decryption program hummed, casting green light across his features. Brielle set his coffee within reach and settled into the chair beside him, their shoulders touching as lines of code transformed into ledger entries. "There," she pointed. "Those payments started 3 months before the bombing." Leon's jaw tightened as he scrolled through the dates. Wire transfers, shell companies, all leading toward that single devastating day. His knuckles whitened around his coffee mug. "I should have seen it sooner," he said, voice rough. "My own brother." Brielle stilled. "Fabian!" He orchestrated everything. Leon's words came slowly, each one weighted with pain. The bombing, the rumors that I was too broken to lead. He wanted the syndicate for himself. The admission seemed to drain him. His shoulders curved inward, the careful control cracking to reveal raw hurt beneath. Without hesitation, Brielle slid from her chair to kneel beside him. Her hands found the rigid muscles around his scarred thigh, working gentle circles into flesh that never fully healed. Leon's breath caught as she pressed deeper, easing knots that spoke of years of compensation and careful masks. "You don't have to hide from me," she whispered. When her lips brushed his scar, he shuddered. Not from pain this time, from the tenderness he'd denied himself for so long. His fingers tangled in her hair as she kissed her way up his thigh, each touch an absolution. Heat bloomed between them, slow and inexorable as sunrise. His hands trembled as they lifted her, settling her across his lap. Their first kiss tasted of coffee and sugar, of trust finally given. "Brielle," he breathed against her mouth. Permission and plea wrapped in her name. She answered by unbuttoning his shirt, pressing kisses to each inch of skin revealed. His scars told stories of survival. She honored them all. When they came together, it was with reverence, his strength cradling her curves, her softness healing his sharp edges. Afterward, they lay tangled on the study's leather couch, her head on his chest as morning light painted patterns on the walls. His fingers traced idle circles on her back as truth spilled from him like water. "I chose exile," he murmured. "After the bombing, I could have fought harder to keep my place, but I'd already buried too many loyal men." Brielle pressed closer, offering warmth against memories of loss. "Better to be underestimated," he continued, Better to protect my people from the shadows than watch more die for my pride. She kissed his chest right over his heart. You kept them safe. And now I'll keep you safe. His arms tightened around her. While we finish what your father started. They dozed for an hour, wrapped in rare peace. When they finally stirred, the sun was high and the villa hummed with daily activity. Brielle pulled on Leon's shirt, swimming in fabric that smelled like him, and headed to the kitchen while he made calls. The familiar rhythm of baking centered her as voices drifted from Leon's office. She heard him speaking with Greta at Port Authority, then Paolo coordinating the net that would eventually close around Renzo. Her hands stayed steady as she measured flour and sugar, turned dough into sustenance for the house that protected them. Guards drifted through for coffee, pretending not to notice the marks on her neck or the way Leon's eyes followed her movements. She fed them warm bread and kept working, letting routine anchor this new reality where love and danger twined like vines. Evening painted the sky in watercolors when Leon found her again. Without words, he led her onto the terrace, the first time he'd stepped out there since she arrived. The sea crashed below, eternal and wild as the feelings between them. Their fingers interlaced as they stood at the rail. The rising moon silvered Leon's profile as he turned to her. Whatever comes, he said softly, we face it together. Brielle squeezed his hand, feeling the strength in his grip. Together, she agreed. The words settled between them like a vow as night deepened over the villa. Behind them, lights glowed in windows and guards made their rounds. Before them stretched shadow-dark waters and the promise of justice long delayed. In the kitchen, another batch of bread rose slowly, filling the air with the scent of home. Security radios crackled with routine checks as Rex patrolled the grounds below. Everything had changed, yet the rhythm of protection continued, now wrapped around both of them, bound by love as much as duty. Leon's cane tapped softly as they walked the terrace's length, his limp more pronounced after their morning's passion. But his steps were sure, each one carrying him forward beside the woman who had seen past his defenses to the heart beneath. The moon climbed higher, turning waves to silver below the cliffs. In its light, they stood together, the feared king and the woman who refused to fear him, united by encrypted truths and promises whispered against skin. Whatever storms gathered on their horizon, they would weather them as one. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Brielle whisked eggs for the guards' breakfast. Her phone buzzed, displaying her aunt's number. She almost dropped the bowl. Please, her aunt's voice wavered. I need to see you. At St. Michael's Chapel, to apologize. I have some of your father's things. Photos you might want. Brielle's hand tightened on the phone. I need to check with Leon first. Of course. Noon would be perfect. The old courtyard, you remember? After ending the call, Brielle found Leon in his study. He looked up from his laptop, reading her tension immediately. My aunt wants to meet. Says she has family photos. Brielle twisted her fingers together. At St. Michael's Chapel. Leon's jaw tightened. He tapped his cane twice against the floor. A habit she'd learned meant he was strategizing. We'll set visible security. Salvo's team on hidden overwatch. You think it's a trap? I think your aunt has never apologized for anything. He stood, touching her cheek. But we'll be ready. The chapel's stone walls rose against blue sky as Leon's SUV approached at noon. Salvo had positioned snipers on the surrounding rooftops while uniformed guards flanked Brielle openly. Her aunt waited in the courtyard, wringing her hands. When Brielle stepped forward, the older woman's eyes darted left. Then she stumbled back. Men burst from behind pillars. Brielle felt rough hands grab her arms as zip ties bit into her wrists. A phone on a selfie stick appeared, broadcasting her capture live. Your precious Leon Valente has 1 hour, Renzo's voice boomed through speakers. Bring the ledger or watch her. Suffer! A sharp crack echoed, Salvo's shot taking out the broadcasting antenna, but the damage was done. The threat had spread across Renzo's network. Rough hands dragged Brielle through heavy doors. She forced herself to stay calm, counting steps. Left turn, right turn, 14 paces to a back room. She studied the hinges, noted where light leaked under doors, just as Leon had taught her during late-night security lessons. Her phone rang in her captor's possession. They put it on speaker. You have my attention. Leon's voice could have frozen hell. I'll bring Ledger access at dusk. Keep her unharmed, or what follows will be biblical. The call ended. Brielle settled against the cold wall, controlling her breathing like Leon showed her during his physical therapy. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. Her fingers traced the zip tie's ridges, looking for weak points. She reviewed the chapel's layout in her mind. Main sanctuary to the north, courtyard east, 2 emergency exits required by code. The room they'd dragged her to smelled of candle wax and dust, probably the sacristy where priests once prepared for mass. Church bells chimed the hour. Brielle closed her eyes, remembering Leon's hands cupping her face that morning. I keep my promises, he'd said so many times. He would come. The question was whether she could help herself in the meantime. Her aunt appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. They said they just wanted to talk to you. You were always a terrible liar. Brielle kept her voice steady. Did they pay you or just threaten you? You don't understand. After your father died, I understand perfectly. Brielle shifted, testing the zip ties. You saw another chance to sell me out. Heavy footsteps approached. Her aunt scurried away as 3 of Renzo's men entered, checking their phones and muttering about lost signals. They hadn't searched her thoroughly. The small blade Leone had sewn into her bra strap still pressed against her spine. Brielle watched them pace, noting their patterns. The youngest one kept touching his gun nervously. The oldest favored his right leg, an old injury. The middle one checked his watch every few minutes. She could work with that. Time crawled. She counted bells, tracked shadows, memorized guard rotations. Leone had trained her for this without either of them realizing it. All those nights discussing security layouts over dinner, mornings watching him plan convoy routes, the way he'd taught her to read people's weaknesses during staff meetings. Her captors grew increasingly agitated as dusk approached. They argued in harsh whispers about escape routes and backup plans. None of them noticed how she tested the zip tie's strength each time they turned away. More bells tolled. Brielle heard voices in the courtyard, Renzo arriving with reinforcements. But she also caught the faint click of a sniper round being chambered through the high window. Salvo's team was in position. She remembered Leone's voice. Fear is useful. Channel it. Use it to sharpen your focus. So she did. She noted the rusty hinges that would squeal warning, the uneven flagstones that could trip pursuers, the ancient wooden door that might splinter under the right force. A phone rang. The eldest kidnapper answered, his face tightening at whatever he heard. Boss says get her ready to move. Brielle let them pull her up, staying compliant. Not yet. Leone's lessons echoed. Wait for your moment. Make them think you're broken until you're ready to break them. She felt the blade against her spine as they marched her toward the courtyard. The church bells began to toll again, marking the arrival of dusk. Leone had promised, and Leone kept his promises. Sunset painted the chapel walls blood red as Leone's black sedan rolled to a stop. Through 2 sets of heavy doors, Brielle caught his measured approach, cane tapping stone, briefcase gleaming. His half-smile told her everything. This was already choreographed chaos. Show us, Renzo demanded through the courtyard speakers. Leone popped the briefcase latches, tilting the screen toward their cameras. Scrolling data filled the display, what looked like perfectly decrypted ledger entries. Release her first, and the transfer begins. Brielle counted 3 of Renzo's men shifting nervously. The youngest one's gun hand trembled. Around the block, traffic snarled mysteriously. Delivery trucks broke down at key intersections. Power fluctuated in nearby buildings, Greta's careful chess game tightening the net. Port Authority vehicles idled just out of sight, Paolo's teams waiting for the signal. You're outnumbered, Valente, Renzo called, and that leg won't help you fight. I don't need to fight, Leone's voice carried clear and cold. I just need to win. He tapped his cane twice on the flagstones. Brilliant white light exploded from hidden spots flooding the courtyard. The kidnappers staggered, shielding their eyes. In that instant of blindness, everything moved at once. Glass shattered as Salvo's team breached through the high windows. Leone advanced with a ballistic shield in his left hand, cane striking precise and brutal in his right. The first attacker went down clutching a shattered wrist. 2 shots cracked against Leone's vest. He grunted but didn't slow, using the shield's edge to pin another man against the wall. His cane whipped up, caught a third assailant under the chin. Boss! Salvo appeared beside Brielle, knife flashing through her zip ties. Go! She sprinted toward Leone as he cleared her path. His breath came harsh but controlled, each movement economic despite the vest impacts. When she reached him, his arm curved around her, shield forward, body angled to cover her. Moving, he called. Salvo's team laid covering fire as they retreated toward the car. Police sirens wailed closer. Greta's careful traffic snarl parted just enough for their sedan to slip through while blocking pursuit. In the back seat, Leon's breath hitched. Brielle saw dark red seeping through his shirt at the shoulder. Graze, he managed, caught the edge of the vest. "Don't you dare pass out!" She pressed her wadded sweater against the wound, other hand gripping his. "That's an order?" His laugh came rough but real. "Yes, ma'am." The city blurred past as they wove through Paolo's coordinated chaos of roadblocks and detours. Blue lights flashed in their mirrors, but the police weren't chasing them. They were securing the scene they'd left behind, boxing in Renzo's scattered men. Leon's head rested against the seat, eyes half closed but alert. His fingers stayed laced with hers, thumb brushing her pulse point. The cane lay across his lap, steel tip stained dark. "The ledger in the briefcase," Brielle said. "Was it real?" "Corrupted dummy file." His smile turned sharp. "Set to brick their system if they tried to force access. Greta's idea." Traffic thinned as they approached the docks. Their driver took the medical center's service entrance, where a private elevator waited. The clinic apartment above had bulletproof windows overlooking container cranes and dark water. "Next time," Leon murmured as they helped him from the car, "let's skip the dramatic rescue. I'm getting too old for vest shots." "Next time?" Brielle steadied him, careful of his bad leg. "There won't be a next time. I'm not leaving your sight again." His arm tightened around her waist. "Promise?" "Promise." She kissed his temple as the elevator carried them up. "Now let's get you patched up before you bleed on my favorite sweater." Emergency lights painted the city in strobes of blue and red. But up here, with Leon's heartbeat strong under her hands, Brielle finally felt her own pulse settling. They had made it. They were together. Everything else could wait. The apartment door clicked shut behind them. Medical supplies waited on steel trays. Greta's efficiency at work again. Leon sank into a chair, letting Brielle help with his shirt buttons while their driver radioed an all clear. "Your aunt?" he asked quietly. "Leave her to the police." Brielle's hands stayed gentle as she cleaned the graze. She made her choice. He caught her wrist, pressed a kiss to her palm. "You're remarkable, you know that. Most people would be falling apart. Most people don't have you." She taped the bandage in place. "Now hold still and let me take care of you for once." Outside, sirens continued their urgent song through the gathering dark. But in this room, with the sea salt air drifting through filtered vents and Leon's breathing evening out under her touch, Brielle found a different kind of music. The rhythm of safety, of belonging, of coming home. Dawn crept through bulletproof windows, painting the clinic apartment in steel blues and grays. Brielle sat in a chair beside Leon's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. The white bandage on his shoulder stood stark against his skin, but his color had improved through the night. The smell of antiseptic mingled with fresh coffee as Salvo moved quietly through the room, his debrief delivered in low tones that wouldn't disturb Leon's rest. "Perimeter's clear," Salvo reported, handing Brielle a steaming mug. "Paolo's got eyes on the street, Greta's monitoring frequencies, no chatter about last night." "The drive?" Brielle asked, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. "Final decryption pass is running now." Salvo checked his phone. "Should be done in..." A soft chime from the laptop cut him off. Brielle set down her coffee and moved to check the screen, careful not to let her chair scrape the floor. The data unfurled like a poison flower. Payment chains, shell companies, dates that aligned perfectly with the bombing that shattered Leon's leg. All of it traced back to one offshore holding company, Midnight Crown Holdings. "That's Fabian's." Leon's voice came rough with sleep. He pushed himself up, wincing. "His pet project. He thinks he's clever, using a chess reference." Brielle touched his uninjured shoulder. "You should rest more." "I've rested enough." His jaw tightened as he studied the screen. "My own brother, I knew, but seeing the proof..." A creak from the back stairwell silenced them. Salvo reached for his weapon, but the door burst open before he could draw. 6 men poured in, guns with suppressors already raised. Leon lunged for his cane, but he was still pulling on his jacket. 2 men grabbed Brielle, while others covered Salvo. She fought, landing an elbow strike that made one grunt, but a third attacker wrapped her in a bear hug. "Don't!" the leader warned Leon, who had his cane half raised. "We only need the girl. Anyone else moves, she bleeds." Leon's phone rang. Blocked number. He answered on speaker, eyes locked on Brielle. "Hello, brother." Fabian's voice dripped false warmth. "I see my men arrive safely." "Let her go," Leon said, each word carved from ice. "This is between us." Oh, but she's the key piece, isn't she? The one who softened the mighty king? Fabian laughed. Come to the old shipyard by nightfall, alone. We'll discuss terms like civilized men. If you hurt her, please, I'm not a savage. But really, Leone, a king who limps doesn't deserve a queen who runs. You've grown weak, choosing love over power. The line went dead. They dragged Brielle toward the stairs. She caught Leone's gaze, tried to pour everything she couldn't say into that look. His face was carved stone, but his eyes blazed. The van they shoved her into smelled of rust and oil. As they wound through morning traffic, Brielle worked her bound hands toward the tiny phone sewn into her sleeve hem. Leone's insistence on backup measures paying off. She activated voice memo with practiced touches, keeping her movements subtle. You really should gag your prisoners, she said conversationally. We tend to notice things, like how desperately you want witnesses for your big moment. One guard shifted uncomfortably. Another told her to shut up. Your boss needs an audience, she continued. He can't resist explaining his brilliant plans, probably practices his speeches in mirrors. She pitched her voice just loud enough to record clearly. Smart people would worry about that tendency to monologue, about someone recording all those boasts and confessions. The guard closest to her raised his hand as if to strike, but the leader shook his head. Boss wants her unmarked. Brielle smiled, letting the expression reach her eyes. Fabian's ego would be his undoing. She just had to keep him talking long enough to prove it. The van wound through the warehouse district as afternoon bled toward evening. Salt air and diesel fumes seeped through gaps in the doors. When they finally stopped, Brielle heard the distinctive creak of old dock equipment. Sunset painted the sky in bruised purples when they opened the doors. Wind whipped off the water, carrying the tang of brine and rust. Floodlights blazed to life, casting harsh shadows under the skeletal cranes looming overhead. Fabian stood at the center of the light, wrapped in an expensive coat that fluttered dramatically. His smile didn't reach his eyes as the guards marched Brielle forward. She lifted her chin and met his gaze without flinching. Let him see no fear, no weakness. Let him think he had all the power. Behind him, the sun's last rays painted the harbor blood red. Brielle kept her breathing steady, her expression calm. She was done being anyone's pawn. The hidden phone pressed against her wrist, still recording. All she had to do was make Fabian talk, and men like him always wanted to talk. Night settled over the shipyard like spilled ink. The floodlights cast harsh shadows between stacked containers and rusted equipment, turning everything into a maze of light and dark. Waves slapped against the pier pylons, a steady rhythm beneath the whine of distant sirens. Leone emerged from the shadows, each tap of his cane echoing off concrete. He walked with measured grace, no hint of weakness in his stride. The silver handle caught the light as he approached the illuminated center where Fabian waited with Brielle. Brother. Fabian's smile was all teeth. Oh, I see you followed instructions for once. Let her go, Leone said, voice winter cold. I'm here. Brielle stood perfectly still, reading the subtle signals in Leone's posture. His weight balanced forward, cane angled just so, ready to move. Above them, crane arms stretched into the dark like giant fingers. First, the ledger, Fabian gestured with his gun. All copies. You want to discuss business? Leone spread his hands. Let's discuss the bombing first. Your finest work, wasn't it? Fabian preened, exactly as Brielle had predicted. Hardly difficult to arrange. You were so predictable, always checking the same routes, trusting the same people. Tell me how you did it. Leone shifted, drawing Fabian's attention as shadows moved on the catwalks above. I want to understand my little brother's masterpiece. You really want to know? Fabian laughed. I had them planted under your favorite bench. Timed it for your morning physio, when you'd be most vulnerable. The hard part was finding someone willing to get that close to the mighty Leone Valente. And the money trails? Shell companies, offshore accounts, child's play with father's old contacts. Fabian's voice dripped satisfaction. The real genius was making everyone think you were weak afterward. The great king, broken by his own brother. The confession streamed through Leone's cane mic to Greta's waiting recorder. Brielle kept her expression neutral as she tracked movement behind the containers, Port Authority units sliding into position. Fabian must have caught something in the air, a change in pressure, a whisper of movement. His head snapped up just as spotlights blazed from the cranes, catching him in crossing beams. No! He shoved Brielle hard. She stumbled but turned it into momentum, diving for a tool bucket she'd marked earlier. Her fingers closed around a signal flare as Fabian swung back toward her. The flare ignited with a hiss. Brielle slammed it up into Fabian's face, the sudden magnesium glare blinding him. She twisted away as Leon surged forward, driving his cane into the back of Fabian's knee. Fabian dropped with a howl. Leon locked the cane across his throat using leverage instead of brute force. "That's for the bomb," he growled. Chaos erupted at the edges of the light. Renzo, who'd been watching from the shadows, made a break for a waiting car. He made it 3 yards before slamming into a wall of tactical vests and raised weapons. "Port authority!" Greta's voice cut through the noise. "Nobody moves!" Leon's legs seized as the adrenaline peaked. He gritted his teeth, maintaining pressure until cuffs snapped around Fabian's wrists. Only then did he let Salvo's men take over. Brielle was there instantly, sliding under his arm to support his weight. His cane clattered to the concrete as he pulled her against his chest, both of them trembling with aftermath. "I heard everything," she whispered. "On the phone, when you said you were coming alone." "I will always come for you." His voice was hoarse against her hair. "But I never said I'd come stupid." She laughed wetly as sirens wailed closer. Red and blue lights strobed across the containers, catching the tears on her cheeks. Leon cupped her face in his hands. "Marry me," he rasped. "Tonight. No more waiting." Brielle's heart stuttered. "Tonight? I have a judge who owes me favors. Greta can witness." His thumbs traced her cheekbones. "Unless you want to wait." She silenced him with a kiss, fierce and claiming. "Yes, tonight." Around them, Port Authority units secured the scene. Greta coordinated with tactical teams while Salvo retrieved Leon's cane. The harbor wind carried, the tang of salt and signal flare smoke. Fabian watched with impotent rage as they led him past. "You've gone soft," he spat at Leon. "Love makes you weak." Leon didn't even look at him. He was too busy memorizing the way Brielle's eyes shone in the floodlights, the way her hands stayed steady on his arm. "Love makes him stronger," she told Fabian quietly. "You never understood that." They stayed wrapped in each other as the scene cleared, as evidence was tagged and statements taken. The moon rose over the harbor, turning the water to silver. Leon's leg throbbed, but he couldn't feel the pain past the certainty in his chest. "Ready to go home?" he murmured against her temple. "Almost," Brielle smiled. "We have a stop to make first." She looked up at him. This man who'd given her safety, then freedom, then his heart. Who'd faced down his own brother to protect her. Who'd turned his weakness into strength and his pain into purpose. The night wasn't over yet, but the worst was behind them and the best was still to come. The civil office hummed with fluorescent lights at 4 a.m., the quiet broken only by scratching pens and harbor gulls crying outside. Brielle smoothed her cream silk dress, simple, elegant, perfect for their dawn ceremony. Leon stood tall beside her, his dark suit impeccable, cane polished to a mere shine. "The rings, please," the magistrate murmured. Salvo stepped forward, producing a velvet box. The matching platinum bands caught the desk lamp's glow. Leon's hands were steady as he slid the ring onto Brielle's finger. "I choose you," he said softly, "today and always." Brielle's voice wavered as she placed his ring. "My protector, my partner, my home." Greta dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief as she signed the witness line. The certificate received its final flourish. Official, binding, done. "You may kiss your bride," the magistrate smiled. Leon cupped Brielle's face like she was made of glass and kissed her with infinite tenderness. Outside, the sky began to lighten over the harbor. The next week unfolded in careful steps. Over breakfast in the villa kitchen, Greta delivered updates on Fabian's transfer to maximum security. Leon listened while cutting his eggs, jaw tight but shoulders relaxed. "The evidence is overwhelming," Greta reported. "Attempted murder, conspiracy, racketeering, he's looking at decades." Brielle squeezed Leon's hand under the table. He brought her fingers to his lips. By lunch, Renzo had signed a plea deal. The recording of Fabian's confession had broken his resolve completely. Salvo shared the news while Brielle kneaded bread dough, her rings catching flour. "He's singing like a canary," Salvo said. "Every scheme, every payoff." "Good," Leon replied. "Let him talk." The villa transformed with each passing day. Brielle converted the lower kitchens into a bright teaching space, installing professional ovens and long granite counters. The community pantry filled one wall. Fresh bread, preserved goods, meals for families in need. "Your father would be proud," Leon told her, watching her organize class schedules. You've made his recipes into something beautiful. She funded it all through legitimate Valente accounts, scrutinizing every transaction with fierce attention to detail. The syndicate's legal enterprises expanded under her oversight. Shipping, real estate, import, export. She brought order and transparency, turning shadow into light. Leon reclaimed his authority with quiet strength. Each morning he walked the full length of the terrace, the mastiff padding faithfully beside him. His steps grew smoother, his grip on the cane lighter. The villa staff watched their boss emerge from exile, standing taller with each passing day. Their nights belonged to them alone. Brielle discovered Leon's ticklish spots, the way he melted when she massaged his leg, how he loved to pull her close in sleep. He learned her quiet moans, her sensitive places, the arch of her spine when pleasure peaked. One evening, found them in the kitchen as sunset painted everything gold. Sugar dust floated in the air from Brielle's latest baking experiment. A basket of squirming mastiff puppies, their dog's unexpected litter, sat on the floor near Leone's propped cane. "Taste this," Brielle said, offering a spoonful of caramel. Instead, Leon set the spoon aside and lifted her onto the counter. His kiss tasted of sugar and promise, deep and sweet. "Whatever punishment they meant became our beginning," he murmured against her lips. "And our forever." The kitchen filled with warm light as day settled into dusk. Through the windows they could see the harbor stretching toward the horizon, their domain, their home, their future, unfolding like a map of possibilities. Brielle ran her fingers through Leon's hair, remembering that first stormy night when he draped his coat over her shoulders. How far they'd come from that moment of fear and uncertainty. The mastiff puppies tumbled around their feet, all clumsy paws and happy yips. Leon reached down to scratch behind tiny ears, his smile soft and real. This was the man beneath the power, gentle with what he loved, fierce in its protection. In the pantry, fresh loaves cooled on racks while tomorrow's dough rose in covered bowls. The teaching kitchen gleamed, ready for another day of community classes. Every surface spoke of purpose fulfilled, of darkness transformed into warmth. Salvo's quiet footsteps approached with the evening security report. Beyond the kitchen, the villa hummed with life. Guards changing shifts, staff preparing for night, the endless rhythm of their world in motion. Brielle touched the rings on her finger, feeling the weight of belonging. She had found more than safety in Leon's world. She had found herself, strong, capable, cherished. The kitchen timer chimed, marking another batch of cookies done. "I'll get those," Leon said, but she stopped him with a kiss. "We'll get them." Together, she smiled. "That's how we do everything now." He helped her down from the counter, his hands lingering at her waist. The mastiff raised her head to watch them cross to the oven, her puppies scrambling after their feet in an uncoordinated parade. The harbor breeze carried salt and possibility through the open windows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new triumphs, new chances to build something good from the ashes of betrayal. But tonight was for this moment, this peace, this love that had bloomed in the most unexpected soil. Leon's cane clicked against the tile as they moved through their kitchen dance, working in perfect sync. The timer counted down, marking seconds of ordinary magic. This was their victory, not just surviving, but thriving. Not just existing, but building a future neither of them could have imagined on that first rainy night.